the end of the road. This is the last one of the season. All a bit sad, really, but because not only is it finals for this, but also the Rugby World Cup is coming to an end. But to discuss all of the Mitre 10 Cup action with me, I have Mr. Stephen Harris. How are you doing, sir?
Well, very good, thank you, Paul. And once again, a privilege and a pleasure for the very last time to talk about the heartbeat of New Zealand's rugby, the Mitre 10 Cup.
The very last time about Mitre 10 Cup, but I'm sure we will be talking about other stuff, and I'll be getting you on other shows. Don't worry, don't worry. You won't be. This isn't it. This isn't the last time everyone will see Stephen Harris and just hear his dulcet tones over the radio. So, sir, we kicked off with Bay of Plenty versus Hawke's Bay on a Friday night in Rotorua, a chilly evening. And I'll be honest, so I was there, and can you believe it? They didn't even have any merchandise on sale. You couldn't even buy a Bay of Plenty jersey.
Wow, that's pretty poor, and it kind of mirrored the size of the crowd. And just talking to a couple of family members who drove up from Napier and also from Auckland, they said there wasn't a great atmosphere either.
No, it had its moments where it got a little bit noisy, but it wasn't as good as the previous weekend when it was free tickets. Let's be honest. So for this one evening, Simon, who was and Simon's joining us, who was actually at the ground, and I said hello to him as I was getting my half-time coffee. But it wasn't as good a game, to be honest. So I can understand why the crowd wasn't quite so loud and so noisy. But I can understand why they couldn't maybe thought it wasn't atmosphere at one of these games. In all honesty, Bay of Plenty prefer to play at Tauranga. They get bigger crowds there. But the problem is Tauranga doesn't have floodlights. So at the end of the day, they have to play in Rotorua for the evening games, which, let's be honest, is a little chillier.
I was going to say, Paul, they have used Bay Park over the years as well, which is in Mount Maunganui. But for anybody who's been to that ground, you're a long way from the action at that particular ground. Obviously, more made for the Speedway. But I think moving forward, I did see an article on the Silver Fern forum that there is a trainer thought there is going to be a new stadium built in Tauranga, so it looks pretty exciting.
Yeah, it is. It's one of these things, isn't it? If you're looking at Bay of Plenty, they play 3 games in Tauranga a year. Are they going to build a stadium that's big enough to get an All Blacks game, or maybe a Warriors game? So you're really building a stadium that gets used maybe a handful of times a year, if you're lucky. Is it really worth all that expense for something that gets used only five nights a year? And you have to be very careful how you go about building these stadiums and think about alternative uses for them. So, I mean, when Exeter Chiefs, for example, their stadium is effectively a conference centre that happens to be shaped in the shape of a rugby stadium. So it's used most days of the year as a conference centre. So if you do that kind of thing, then it kind of makes sense. But if you just build a stadium to be a stadium, it's really hard to make the numbers add up.
Actually, we should probably cover the game off, Paul.
Really?
Yeah.
There was a game?
yeah. There was a game. Obviously, it was a game where what only ended up one try being scored.
Yes, it wasn't. It wasn't the most most scintillating game, but I think we've found that finals or knockout rugby tends to do that, as we've seen in the Rugby World Cup as well.
Oops. Yeah. Listen, from a Hawke's Bay piece, I think they'll probably feel they missed an opportunity, because I actually thought they created the better scoring chances in the game, which was really surprising when you think back to that round robin game. But I thought Hawke's Bay did a great job of actually shutting down the likes of Tia, who'd been so dangerous in that round robin game. But I just thought Hawke's Bay will basically look back at that opportunity to Whakatava, who probably should have scored, but some great defence from probably man of the match Mitchell Carpick in the first half, and there were a couple of other opportunities they actually had to score. And unfortunately for Hawke's Bay, something that's been their strength all season, their line-out, basically malfunctioned, and I think that was pretty much it in a nutshell.
I think it was. You're right. I think Bay of Plenty played finals footy. They kicked threes when they were on offer, took the points when they were on offer.
Mm.
Hawke's Bay was still in the mindset of you score in fives and you get the try bonus points. It's like you don't need a try bonus point, boys. Just
Yeah,
get points on the board.
they,
And they didn't do that until the 56th minute
mm,
when they eventually did manage to get a try. But and let's be honest, that was an interception one to score. It wasn't even it wasn't one they built.
no,
Defences were on top in this one.
yeah. Oh, very much. It was a game of defence, and listen, probably at the end of the day, you'd have to say that the better team won. It would have been unlucky for Bay of Plenty if Hawke's Bay had picked off a try near the end. The other little issue for Hawke's Bay is they earned the eye of the referee Richard Kelly as well, who was basically penalising them at scrum time, especially on Ben May's side. Three needless penalties for basically early pushes. If you've been told once, that's about the only time it really should happen. And they were consistently penalised throughout the game. I thought a couple of them unfairly. I saw on several occasions that Steamers players actually came into rucks off their feet, and he was basically coaching them to move away, where he didn't really give the same degree to Hawke's Bay. But then again, I am probably looking at the game through black and white eyes, Paul.
Yes, I'm not. These aren't black and white stripes I've got on. I've got my Auckland jersey on, and while Stephen might be wearing a Northland jersey, you've definitely got feelings towards the Hawke's Bay side.
Oh, listen, just in terms of Hawke's Bay, I don't think they should feel too downcast. They've got a lot of youngsters there, and incredibly, I thought it was some of their youngsters that actually played well up front. I thought Podiolakati Stones was really good value, and when Flanders came on, I thought he just added a little bit extra in attack as well. You saw the brilliance of Tian Falcon at times when he made a big break up the middle. Of course, wasn't finished, and we know what a good player Whakatava could be, but I don't think it was one of his best games. But I actually thought on a night of all nights, it was probably some of their veterans that really didn't come to the party. From a Bay of Plenty point of view, there were a few individuals that played well, but none better than the most annoying Mitchell Karpik at breakdown. He really puts his body about, and I thought he was pretty outstanding in the main, and probably Bay of Plenty's best player.
He was, and it wasn't the flash stuff from Bay of Plenty. Let's be honest. I mean, at the end there, they went through. I think it was something they had one of these sort of. It felt like 20 to 30 phase defences in their own 22 that Hawke's Bay went through, and it was at that point like, yep, that's how they ended up sucking up all that's how they ran the clock out, was defending in their own 22, which was a very impressive shift.
Yeah.
So you've got to say that the Bay of Plenty bench definitely continued everything that the starting team was doing. And remember, a lot of these squads aren't that deep, so you are definitely talking club players that are coming off the bench, and sometimes replacing someone with All Black experience. For them to step up and to deliver something that good is very impressive. So they did very well in that piece. I know they've been doing it all season, but Hawke's Bay wouldn't come out of the sheds afterwards and have a chat either.
Yeah, that's a little bit disappointing. It's probably something that they are going to have to basically look at moving forward. You want to expose. I think it's a great opportunity to expose some of the younger players to middle media. I know a lot of players don't like talking to the press, but listen, this is a good low key way to maybe sort of talk to yourself. Not that I'm saying you're low key, Paul, but it gives these kids sort of a little bit of experience in front of camera.
It does.
And,
look, I've obviously highlighted Hawke's Bay because they've refused point blank. 4 games I've been to now, but there have been individual players for Bay of Plenty, for Waikato, for other clubs as well, that have turned me down and said no, sorry, I'm not prepared to talk, which is a shame as well. So yeah, it's not only don't worry. There are other players who do, and I understand that for some players English isn't their first language, so they might feel a little bit uncomfortable trying that. But as you say, yeah, the Minor 10 Cup on the whole is a relative. You're only going to get people who are talking positively and fans of the game going to talk to you. Sure, if you've got a red card in a game, turn down interviews because you're going to get asked some difficult questions. But if
Yeah.
you've had a good game, there is absolutely no reason not to turn up.
It's quite an interesting subject, because obviously the subject of questioning people, coaches, players, especially at a time where they're at their lowest. I think sometimes even as a journalist, you've got to read the mood. And I know before I was commentating, I was doing sideline eye, and I was always conscious of the questions that I had ready, especially to a losing captain. I think there has to be a bit of due respect.
Yep.
Whether you offer your commiserations first, tough night at the office, etc. But all you really do is you want to get their thoughts. I certainly don't think you want to throw a question at them. Did you lack passion
Did you?
when you came out on the paddock tonight? I mean, to say seriously, these guys.
That wasn't really the question. The actual question that was asked to Steve Hansen was, did they turn up with the right attitude? And that's but yeah, whatever.
I think yeah. But to me, it's I personally don't think it's a great question at all when you've just been knocked out of a World Cup. But I think that's another argument for another day, Paul.
No, and it's. I mean, I remember. So after the Auckland Canterbury final last year, after we'd had the questions, I very briefly shook hands with the Canterbury coach. Said, "Look, you've had a good season. Don't look. It's been a good season for you guys. Yeah, don't get down about just this one game." Now, hey, does my comment mean anything to these guys? I don't know, but hey, but as you say, don't bash someone when they're down. So had a quick chat with the Bay of Plenty coach, and yeah, he was like, yeah, it would have been nice to have scored some nice tries, but hey, this is finals footy. We knocked over the points, and we got the win, and that's what really kind of mattered. So,
and congratulations to the Bay as well. You know, they basically came to the fore when it mattered. Hawke's Bay, through the first part of the competition, probably looked the team to beat, and it might have been a different result if they played down in Napier. But really and truthfully, at the end of the day, they probably got the speed wobbles through some of their last few rounds. And when they did come up against two quality teams in terms of the Steamers and also Tasman, they were found wanting.
And look, let's be clear here. I mean, we had a chat with Goldie after the game, and he was saying how the Steamers were basically could have gone well in the Premiership this year. You're like, well, yes, but they did lose to Wellington and to Auckland. So look, it's there is a difference in the two levels, and we should probably get on to that second final where Tasman beat Wellington 31-14. And let's be honest, Tasman have been the team of the season, and it's no surprise that they've picked up their first ever Minor 10 Cup title. And congratulations and fins up, boys.
Oh, absolutely. But once again, there's another situation. You look at Wellington, and they created 3 or 4 opportunities, but never took those opportunities. And a couple of pieces of great defence from the Marco, but probably once again at the end of the day, they gave up such a huge lead. They were down 23-6 after 24 minutes, and it's a long way to climb back against a good side. They got back to 23-14, looked like they were in the match, but really left it too late. And of course, that late try to Will Jordan pretty much put the game well and truly away.
Yeah, but look, Tasman controlled this from the start, so they got the first points on the board. Once when Wellington got points, they were not going to a penalty on 14 minutes. You saw Will Jordan score a try on 15 minutes. They came straight back and scored. Another penalty on 21 minutes by Gordon Bashop. What happens on 23 minutes? Havili scores. So Wellington really did not do well of exiting and coping once they scored, whereas Tasman really fired back, really used the restart. Players. Nankivell had a really good game. and I think he won one restart and did some other really good plays.
Yeah.
And they really did use their restarts as that third set piece, and they
And,
scored often both times. It was
yeah,
very good.
I know, and that was basically from poor kickoff receives on both occasions. I can remember one, Vince Arceau just absolutely, just spilling the ball basically from the kickoff, a straight kickoff miss from the turnover. Tasman go in and score the try. So those two early tries were just scored by basic errors, Paul. And I think that's what will probably disappoint Wellington the most. Listen, Wellington they're a good side to watch. God, when they get it right, when they get their ball runners going over the advantage line, they are a devastating side to watch. But they also leak a lot of points as well, Paul, as we've seen in a couple of games this year, and just probably finding consistency at first five as well. We know what Jackson Garden Bishop can basically do in the skill set that he provides, but he can be horribly inconsistent, whether it's in general play or off the tee.
Yeah, and they're up against Tasman, who, sure, they've scored a lot of points, but their defence this season has been immense, and that's what they've built this season around. A lot of people will talk about them, and they have played exciting rugby, but they really have not let the opposition score. And by nilling Wellington in that second half, and just slowly turning the screw, it was. Whilst the scoreline says 31-14, but when you think that between Hunt and Havili, they missed two penalties and a conversion in the second half. Now, sure, Garden Bishop also missed two penalties and conversion in the first half, but yeah, there was definitely points left out there on the the grass.
And speaking of Havali, David Havali, he has been just sensational through these finals. In the semi-final against Auckland, I thought he was very good, and once again from the back, just so secure at the back, brings the ball back really, really strongly, and just has a big right boot as well in terms of exits. You kind of wonder if maybe, if he hangs in there and keeps playing good rugby for the Crusaders next year, with the likes of Ben Smith having headed overseas, and still question marks over Geordie Barrett, and again some question marks will come over out of what the All Blacks put out on the field against England in terms of Beauden Barrett. I still think there's an opportunity for a David Havili. He looks like a natural fullback to me, Paul.
He does, but there is a reason why the All Blacks coaches haven't picked him. I don't know what those reasons are, but there's got to be there's something that they don't like, and so I think there is a good chance he'll be heading overseas pretty soon.
Hope it's not his haircut, because if that's the case, they should be looking at Jet Goodhue's haircut. Just a couple of things other on Tasman as well. They lose some experience as well. Paul, we've marvelled on their squad and how deep their squad is, but next year they'll lose. Great way to see Wyatt Crockett go out in his very final game, but also the likes of Jordan Tofua and Liam Squire. Is he heading overseas as well?
So Liam Squire's off to Japan as well. Yes,
he's off to Japan as well. So man, that's a lot of quality. But on saying that, they've brought in some. They've showed they've got an eye for selection as well. I thought the boy who came on in the midfield, or did he start, replaced Moore? Was it Folau Paya? I thought he was.
Yep.
He looks a sensational prospect. He really does. He has got such good leg drive. Paul, he looks like he could be something very, very special. And when he teamed up with Nankivell, man, in fact, they looked even more dangerous when Paya replaced Moore in the midfield. Moore, of course, a very thick-set, heavy player, but I love the power pack running of Folau Paya. Looks a talent. I wonder if he'll get picked up by a Super Rugby squad.
We'll see. Hunt was been key for them this season. When he hasn't played, they've looked more vulnerable. So yes, they've got quality throughout that side. But Jordan picks up a couple of tries, as you say. Parry Parkinson and Quinton Strange, two young guys in the locks there who've got big futures ahead of them as well. So yeah, impressive side, and great to see them score that. And I think the difference has been, as you talked about, that consistency from players like Havili and Jordan, whereas players like Lamb, Arso, just have not had that have not been consistently good. Like
Mm.
also shelled that restart. But we know he's so dangerous with the ball in hand.
Mm.
Retinar as well. Ben Lamb, we know he can be really dangerous with the ball in
Oh,
hand, but can go missing
Ben,
in games,
Ben,
and that's
Ben Lamb.
that's the big difference in these two sides.
I was about to say Ben Lamb. I thought was very very dangerous, and very very good. One of their most to me in summing Wellington up, I thought one of their most consistent players of the year has been James Blackwell.
Mm.
Boy, I don't think he ever plays a bad game. Not the biggest in terms of lock. Locks only looks around the 6'3" mark tops, but his work rate was phenomenal. When you sort of compare it to Via Fafita, he gave away about 2 or 3 real needless penalties. So he offsets his game with in ill discipline. They've got a brilliant, promising number 8 in Tiariki Ben Nicholas, but also big ups to their skipper as well, Duplessis Karifi. If there's a pound for pound better loose forward in this country, I don't know who it is. He puts himself about, doesn't he?
He does, but he plays right on the edge and tends to flip over it a few times as well,
Mm,
as far as
mm,
discipline goes. Not in a kind of red mist kind of way, but just in a he just tends to give away a couple of
mm,
technical penalties a game
mm,
because he is right on the edge, which does mean he's an absolute menace. But when he gets it wrong, yeah, that's points away.
mm.
So looking at the season as a whole, across the whole thing. I mean, we haven't. We probably should discuss what we're going to talk about this evening. But Tasman obviously had a fantastic season. Wellington, I think, performed ahead of what I expected of them. But Canterbury and Auckland, the other two semi-finalists, perhaps been a little bit below their best, a little bit disappointing this season.
Yeah, I must admit, Auckland were disappointing, but I thought they put in a really good shift in that semi-final last weekend. Paul, I thought they were right in that game, and it only really took a bit of brilliance from Tasman to pull away in that game. But yeah, you're right. They certainly weren't a patch on the 2018 version. Canterbury, listen, I'll cut them a bit of slack. They introduced a lot of young guys, 3 or 4 young guys from out of the New Zealand 20s this year, and we know the guys that they have lost, and
Yep.
they're one of those teams who are always going to be there or thereabouts. And at the end of the day, if you consider how they started, did they start with 3 losses?
They started off with 3 losses. Yep.
Yeah, 3 losses. You got to give them big ups to the way they go. So they were that at the end of the day, that were the right 4 teams that probably made it there. North Harbour, probably the little bit the hard luck story. They had a really good base to work for in terms of their scrum with Mafilio and Carlton Nukuyafi, especially up front. I don't think they got bettered up front, but suffered a bit of inconsistency.
Yeah, I mean, North Harbour finished pretty much where we thought they would do. Really solid up front, some real dangerous backs, outside backs, but no real 10 to guide them around the field and look after them, unfortunately. Waikato got themselves safe a couple of rounds before the end. So as the promoted team, I think they were they'd be happy with that. They even had an outside chance of making the playoffs going into the final round. It was a very outside one. So I think they could be happy with their season. And Counties, well, didn't make the most of what was a good platform from their scrum with with basically a midfield that couldn't that just gave them no go forward.
Mm.
Into the championship then. Obviously, Bay of Plenty, I think, will be very happy. Only those 2 losses against Wellington and Auckland, so 2 of the guys who made the playoffs in the Premiership, so they'll be very happy with that. Hawke's Bay. Sorry,
Paul, I was about to say about the Steamers as well. I think they ended up second on the table in terms of points scored. They ended up with a differential of plus 181. When you compare that to Tasman, who got plus 277, that was probably on the back of a couple of real big wins as well. So they finished second. Our next team was Canterbury with plus. With plus 147. So just goes to show they can score points.
They can. That plus 147, remember, included an 80-0 victory over Southland. So that is inflated by 1 game, quite dramatically. Absolutely. They had a good points difference. They showed they could score points. They weren't a one-trick pony. They definitely had different strings to their bow. Hawke's Bay, yeah, a really good season for them. As you've mentioned, young players, perhaps a bit of a one-trick, perhaps a little more limited than Bay of Plenty needed. Use that line out more to score tries in most games very well. But when it comes to finals time, you need a little bit more than that about your game.
I was going to say, Paul, it was almost like they used it so much, got them through that first half of the season, probably the first 3/4 of the season, and then teams started working that line out. And the first time we saw it was in Tauranga when the Steamers played Hawke's Bay, and then after that they really didn't get a lot of pay dirt out of that line out drive. I think it was the odd try against Otago. So they've just got to really expand their game. And when you talk about depth, I think Bay of Plenty had good depth in their squad to get them across the line. I think Hawke's Bay probably have to go and do a little bit of shopping next year. Hopefully they'll have the likes of Brad Weber available next year. Young Whakatava is a good footballer, but I still think he's got a long way to go. And they're a little small in the back line, I've got to say. So just probably develop their backline play, and they're more than likely to take out that championship division in 2020.
Yep. Otago had a chat with Ben Herring after the Northland game, and he was really happy. He said, look, they'd really enjoyed their rugby at home and defending Ranfurly Shield. Obviously, a shame they didn't quite they didn't hold on to it for the full season. So I think on the whole, you can say that even with the 5-5, 50%, that Otago had a decent season. Manawatu were the other ones that made the finals. 4 wins, 6 losses. Minus 118 points, though. They really blew hot and cold, did Manawatu, and were very reliant on Laumapi.
Yeah, Laumapi, and I don't think it helped losing their lock Jackson Himapore as well. I've heard through a few people in the know that their forward pack is just a completely different forward pack when he's playing, but in the main, in the main, you've got to say they'll probably be a tad disappointed, although the second half of the season was better than the first half.
Yeah, but, and they had some atrocious conditions for a couple of their home games starting off. So as well. Taranaki, definitely a team that disappointed. Kicked the season off with 3 wins on the trot from memory. Ended up with 4 wins and 6 losses. A team that was looking to bounce straight back into the Premiership, and in all honesty, came nowhere near that. A side that has got some real talent in it, but they failed to live up to expectations there. Northland, well, you've got the Northland jersey on. I mean, pre-season we said, look, who's a team we thought would step on and hopefully challenge for the playoffs, and that didn't happen, did it?
No, it didn't. Listen, at the end of the day, they had a lot of injuries, and we talk about depth and squad, and they didn't have the depth and squad. So simple as that. Not to mention they leaked a lot of points. 100 minus 168 is a lot of points, and in there's a couple of really hefty thumpings. I think at the end of the day, it kind of worked out to an average score of about 45-12 or something like that. That's what the average losing scores. Look out for some changes afoot there in the coaching ranks, Paul, is the word I'm getting. So we might see the Northlanders pretty much on their way out. And you heard it first on the DrivingMaul. So
we did. They've been doing a lot of good work at club level. And I think it really was down to injuries this year rather than necessarily any deficiencies on their part. But there we go.
Listen, it's a very big area, and it doesn't lack talent. But because it's such a vast area, especially getting to Whangarei, I know there was a train of thought they're looking at building a development or a high-performance centre up in Kirikiri, which is sort of mid-north, and that would basically help younger players to get in there. So I know junior development is going to be a big part of where they go going forward. I know, just to give a lot of our viewers a bit of an insight, they lose a lot of players, younger players, to Auckland schools. Then they basically stay in the Auckland system. I know, chatting to a guy today who's involved with junior development, he said he could rattle off about 30-odd names that are playing for other secondary schools around the northern area. That's everywhere, pretty much, from whether it's Westlake boys down to Hamilton boys to Rotorua boys. So, listen, at the end of the day, not much you can do about that. If you're a parent and you want to send your child to a good rugby school, it is what it is. Maybe the key thing is to basically making sure that you can keep some of that, have a little piece of that pie that you can keep.
Yep, and trying to get them to return afterwards is key, because you're not going to hold on to them. Southland, then, they got a win, so that's got to be a successful season for them, considering the last couple of years. They've already made their coaching change with their assistant coach stepping up to the full-time to the head coach role, and looking to get seeing how much they can afford as far as assistants. But Southland, we saw some enterprising rugby from them, but we knew from the beginning, we knew from before the season started, they were going to struggle.
Yeah, listen, and in all honesty, given where they have been and how they played this year, listen, apart from that big thumping they got against Canterbury, and I think they may have got a big thumping against Taranaki, there were a couple of games that they were right in the contest. We just spoke about the very first game against Northland, right in the contest. Deep in there, the Manawatu game, where they were up by some ridiculous score at halftime, only to implode in the second half. And there was also games against North Harbour where they were right in the contest. But I even thought they actually played really well against the Steamers, and the Steamers didn't take control of that game to the last 10 minutes or so. Now, a lot of that was pretty much on the back of a very good scrum. I think in terms of scrummaging, I think they might have had about the third best scrum in the whole competition pool. So they've got a base to work with. And let's not forget, they basically had injuries at the start of the season as well. Yep. They lost, I know, talking to assistant coach Dale McLeod, who's now their head coach. He's taken over from Dave Hewitt. He'll be the head coach moving forward for Southland. So good luck to Dale. He's a good personal friend and ex Northland assistant coach. So I'm absolutely delighted. But he's got a very, very big job in front of him. So hopefully these players, who are mostly club players, will be a little bit better next year, and hopefully some of the players that they've lost. Just a bit of a concern for Southland Rugby. We've heard about the case of Manaki Selby Rickett, who is basically gone through the courts, which is a real shame because he's a very, very promising lock forward. We didn't see him on the paddock for various reasons this year because of the injury, and of course let's hope he can basically get back on track. But I think building their depth is a real important one for the Stags.
Yep. So that's how we've seen all the teams go. Simon puts in there's a rumour that Bay of Plenty might become a global rapid rugby side. That's interesting. I mean, there was rumours a year, maybe 2 years ago, that North Harbour would be. And to me, that made a lot of sense because obviously you're near Auckland Airport, because global rapid rugby is going to require a lot of travel. Bay of Plenty, not quite so near Auckland Airport. So interesting that they might be the one that joins. But as I say, North Harbour to me makes more sense, except that it might clash. Actually, no, it shouldn't do, because the baseball season finishes at the end of January, and that's when global rapid rugby should kick off.
Well, Simon, if you're listening, my Twitter handle is @Stephen73_H. That's @Stephen73_H. So, man, contact with me. I'd love to have a bit of a chat away from the show about that. A very, very interesting development. But then again, this Bay of Plenty thinking outside the square. Obviously, you've got to get some income from somewhere, Paul. It's as simple as that. Now, I think if you can maybe align yourself to a various competition, good on you.
And when I was trying to talk to Clayton about what he was going to be doing to keep his club players engaged, he was pretty evasive and just said their high performance group is very good. So maybe he's being evasive because there was news to come. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, that would be really interesting if they did. Join that.
Paul, out of interest, when does the rapid rugby season start and finish?
Well, we're still waiting for it to actually happen. So we haven't had a full season yet. It's just been a series of exhibition games. But the idea is that it will run at the same time as Super Rugby, effectively.
Wow.
So it would run at the same time as Club Rugby in New Zealand. So it would definitely give those players the non they will be playing non-Super Rugby players in that competition. So we'll see how it all pans out. Which is kind of interesting because the other thing that a whole bunch of players you'll see from Mitre 10 Cup is we'll be heading over to the USA for Major League Rugby, which runs at the same time as Super Rugby as well, to get professional contracts over there. It allows them to go over, play that, and then come back and play Mitre 10 Cup. So that's some of the players will be doing that as well. And also next year we have kicking off a South American professional league that will also run at the same time as Super Rugby. So it'll be interesting to see if any players decide to head down there and play a bit of rugby with Argentina or Uruguay or Chile or one of those sort of places.
Crazy, isn't it? The development of the game around the world, and there's probably bigger issues for New Zealand rugby than getting knocked out of a Rugby World Cup, isn't there, Paul?
Well, at the moment, a lot of these tournaments aren't paying Super Rugby wages. Let's be honest. Okay, so having talked to one of the players who did go play Major League Rugby last year, I asked him, "Are you going to go back?" And he said, "Look, first off, I'll try and get a Super Rugby gig. If I don't get a Super Rugby gig, then I'll go back." So Super Rugby is still preferential. It's definitely gets players who aren't quite good enough Super Rugby, but who are still young enough and still think they can make a career out of rugby, and so hence would like to get a job rather than having to work full time and in say a sawmill or a meatworks or as an apprentice and try and play club rugby. They'd rather get paid during that time, not serious money, but not big money, but enough to live off, and also train fully. So Simon says, that around March is when Global Rapid Rugby would kick off. Yeah, it's going to be somewhere between that sort of March to end of June window. Super Rugby is sort of February to end of June, so it's going to be in that window is when these sort of competitions run. Mm-hmm. South America scares me. I blame the media, but good opportunity for some guys. Look, the South American competition is going to be below. Is not even going to be up to Mitre 10 Cup standard. It's going to be way down there initially. It's going to take a good 5 to 10 years to get properly going. So I can't see that it's going to be a very high standard. Maybe, if Chile can get the national team playing, then maybe it will be a decent level. But I think we're some ways away before him to worry about players leaving Super Rugby to go to South America. Been an absolute pleasure, Stephen. Any other sort of provincial or?
Yeah, I do. There's a couple of other competitions I do want to touch upon. And first of all, I did watch both finals of the Farah Cup. I watched the Canterbury women take on the Auckland Storm down at I think it was at Rugby Park in Christchurch, and boy, what a great game this was. It really was a superb game. Canterbury only really pulling away in the last probably 10 minutes or so. Canterbury received the yellow card to Curtis on the 71st minute, and I thought, gee, Auckland, you're right back in this game. You were 27-20 down, but to be honest, just really didn't take their opportunities. But this Auckland team is they're a young side, and they're only going to get better. They really are only going to get better. But the player of the day for me, and she was superb behind the Canterbury pack, was Kendra Coxhead. She was absolutely superb. She kicks goals from all over the place, and she reads a game really well. She'll recognise when the line speed of the opposition is good. She kicks. She's probably one of the most intelligent kickers in the game in the Farah Cup, and once again, absolutely superb. Auckland look very, very dangerous in the backs and very, very strong up front. But I think the Auckland girls will basically think maybe a missed opportunity. 17-10 at a half time. But once again, for this Canterbury team, I think this is their third Farah Cup in a row. So, but it's good to see a team testing them.
Yeah, and you got to remember that Auckland had a 16-year-old running around at fly half earlier in the season. So, as you say, we're talking seriously young teams. I think pretty much every Farah Cup team will have between sort of 4 and 6 girls still at school under 18. So yes, there's a lot of young A lot of young talent running around there, which is
I was
fantastic.
I was very impressed with the Canterbury midfield of Brooker and Anderson, just strapping direct young ladies who just really hit the line, and they got in and basically barred up when they lost their winger to a yellow card. They were absolutely superb. Auckland, for all their efforts, were very good. Moore's at the back always looks dangerous, and you've got Princess Elliott on the right wing, and my God, she's got some footwork. There are so many good young footballers in this Auckland side, and of course got a bit of experience with Blackwell and Smith, the two Blackfern locks in the middle pool. So superb. So congratulations to Canterbury. They may not have taken out the men's title, but they're women showing the way.
And yeah, Princess, from memory, she's nearly half the weight of some of the props. I mean, it shows you that
Oh,
the women's game is still a game for all shapes and sizes. Because yes, remember, it is an amateur game. It's not a fully professional game
and,
in the
and,
way that
and,
Minor 10 Cup is. And so it is still a game for everybody.
and of course, to compound my misery, every rugby team that I supported the weekend went belly up. So I'm not. My name's not Stephen Harris. It's the Death Star.
The Death Star. Well, because Otago Spirit
I'm the
beats
Death Star. I'm the Death Star at the moment because I was once again going to support the Hawke's Bay Tui girls, and they went down 24-20 after they had led by 8 points to 7 at half time. A couple of controversial things here for me. Moatani, the second five for Otago, was yellow carded for a tip tackle. Now, to me, it should have been a red card. The player was actually lifted through the horizontal and driven down into the turf. Yes, she landed on his shoulder. And that's what probably saved her. But at the end of the day, the tackler had basically made no attempt to ensure that the player had gone down safely. Now, maybe I'm being bitter and twisted here about it, but also the official had given Otago a general warning for repeated infringements, and she didn't follow through in the second half. But on saying all that defence from Otago during that time was outstanding. And outstanding for Otago was Rosie Kelly, the young first five, only about 18, for crying out loud, who's transferred from Canterbury down to Otago for university. She was absolutely superb. And also for Otago, who was superb, was the fullback Hume, who I know we've had Winiata, who's been the Black Ferns Kiwi fullback for a very, very long time. But the girl Hume has got some good top-end pace. And like I said, Paul, some really good girls running around at the moment. Muir at number 8 was also very, very good for Otago. That's not to say that Hawke's Bay were pretty good themselves. They'll kick themselves. They had the opportunities to, like they meant to take this game out of reach, and really just didn't activate their game plan very well. I thought Cottrell at first, Jensen and Cottrell were very good. The halfback in first five, very good. I like the look of McGregor at second five, very, very direct. And at fullback, Tippy Way, the fullback, well, she's got some pace. But the girl to look out for is Mikaeli Tu, which is the sister of Marino, Mikaeli Tu. She looks a prospect at lock at only 18 years old and out of Hastings girls, I think. But the word is she might be transferring to Auckland for the 2020 season. So unfortunate for the Tui, but congratulations to Otago, who will play in the Premiership division of the Parapama Cup in the 2020. And once again, it was actually great to see.
Unless there's a rule change again.
Yeah, great to see Parapama on hand as well to basically to give out the cup. Absolute legend of our game.
Fantastic. Yeah, I mean, Cottrell missing two conversions and a penalty. If she slotted those, then it would have been a different game.
Yep.
It was a close one.
Absolutely. Little moments, as we know, in the finals, and also just for the Heartland Rugby. Mm-hmm. I didn't see both of these games. I did see the game yesterday, but congratulations to North Otago for taking out the win against Whanganui at home. Pretty much, I think they won by a decent sort of score. Might have been 33-14.
33-19.
33-19 at the end of the day. Pretty convincing from North Otago. Feature of the game, though, you don't see too many loose head props drop kicking a goal, and that's exactly what bit of a legend down that way, Ralph Darling, did.
Yep.
I'm thinking of Blackadder when I hear that game. With that name, Darling. But I sat down yesterday afternoon and I decided to watch West Coast, who have never won anything in New Zealand rugby, and unfortunately they still haven't won anything in New Zealand rugby because it was South Canterbury who took out the win by 23 points to 19. Now the crazy thing about this game, it was very close at halftime, but West Coast had a big storm came through and they had a big gale behind them, but really couldn't take advantage of that situation. And a chap by the name of Willie Wright, who was playing at first five, I think, for South Canterbury, kicked a couple of brilliant penalty goals into the wind, and on both occasions he pretty much got the "you won't get it" from the crowd, and he aptly kicked both of those kicks and aptly went like this to the crowd as he was running back. I thought it was absolutely brilliant, and I've got to say the second penalty was brilliant. It was a wide angle penalty from, oh God, it looked like it was about, I don't know, 30 odd metres out on that angle into the wind, and he bent it like Beckham. Basically pushed it into a strong wind to the left, and it curled round to the right and dropped over on the right corner. So fantastic.
Well, I've been looking at it. So South Canterbury had a big lead at half-time, 5-17.
Exactly.
You then had West Coast came back into its lead 19-17 after 53 minutes. So fantastic comeback by West Coast, only for 2 late penalties for Canterbury to get themselves. Those are the only scores Canterbury got in the second half. So they allowed West Coast right back into it to take the lead, and then had the spine to come back and knock over 2 penalties just to sneak it at the end.
And you know, Paul, it's great rugby for those communities. They get in behind it. You know, you see some. I mean to say, West Coast had a huge lock. Oh my God, he was around about 2 meters, 120 kgs. Really, really big guy, and it's great to see you get those real characters. And then I think it was South Canterbury rolled out a prop. Well, I'll tell you, if he was 140 k's dripping wet, he was probably weighing a little bit more. Absolutely big barrel-chested guy, ran out, did his jobs. When he ran, he looked like he was walking. It was great rugby, and it was a great way to round out what's been once again a real exciting Mitre 10 Cup across all divisions. But probably just in a general statement, I do think New Zealand rugby has to make sure they foster this game a hell of a lot better, seriously, because this is where your next All Blacks come from. You know, I don't think New Zealand rugby will ever suffer because of the amount of kids that they've got running around at school. But it's important that you make sure this competition is well supported. And like I always keep saying and banging on, it's the heartbeat of the game, Paul.
No, it is. It's interesting to hear Goldie talk about the fact that the new CEO of Sky is all up for helping New Zealand rugby to grow the game, not just about grow TV audiences. So that's going to be interesting to see how that progresses next year. Now, I don't agree with Goldie, who was suggesting that they should not televise some games and have an afternoon game that isn't televised. I think then all you're doing then is making sure the away fans can't watch a game, because let's be honest, the distances here are too big for that. And I think rather than making it, you have 2 ways of trying to encourage people to games. You either use the carrot or the stick, and by not televising it, you're basically trying to cause it to make it too painful that they have to go to the game. Whereas I think you actually just need to make it as good as possible at the game, and use the carrot. Because if you use the stick, we're just going to have less and less people following the game full stop. So that's my 2 cents worth. Well, thank you very much, Stephen. It's been an absolute pleasure.
No, it's been fantastic. It's this competition is very much a sprint, but on saying that, it's a case of who's still standing as you get into the last couple of weeks of the season, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and it's not quite as blink and you miss it as the Curry Cup, which is even shorter. But it really is. You have to have a good start. I mean, a couple of teams have shown that Canterbury turned it round, but if you start badly, it can be one of those ones where you never get yourself going, because it is only 10 weeks, the regular season, then there's 2 weeks of finals. Yeah, it is really a quick competition, but a much one I've enjoyed getting around to 20 whatever it is odd games this season, and hopefully everyone has enjoyed the coverage. And so we'll be back next year with the Mitre 10 Cup. But before then, the Hash Rugby Chat show happens every Tuesday, 52 weeks a year, and the All Blacks edition every Wednesday, 52 weeks a year. So check out those two shows at 8 p.m. on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. And also check out DrivingMaul.com, where there'll be predictions for all the top level rugby competitions, including the Pro 14, Gallagher Premiership, Top 14, European Champions and Challenge Cups. So all that stuff will be coming your way. So do check that out on there whilst we wait for Super Rugby to kick off yet again. Any last words from yourself, Stephen?
Oh, listen, just want to thank those viewers that have supported your show during the 2019 season. But hey, we want you guys to continue watching the show, and we want to help you feed this guy as well, so you can keep the show running. Or else he's going to have to find a full-time job. It's simple as that. Now, anybody who wants to ask me some questions about Mitre 10 rugby, or indeed any sort of rugby, or even my state of health after the All Blacks losing on the weekend, which is pretty good. I did toast Paul earlier this evening with a beer. So listen, just like anything with time, things come around. So you can contact me on my Twitter handle, which is @Stephen73_H. So the Twitter handle again, @Stephen73_H, because I keep forgetting it. Thanks, Paul. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.